Okay. Welcome back to the She Speaks podcast, the mother-daughter duo, where we are bridging the gaps between generations, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Erica Montgomery. This is my mama.
Liza Montgomery.
And today we are in Core Focus Studios. So fun. So we're in Massachusetts filming today. Very special day. We got invited to come film a podcast episode, so we're in an awesome studio. Very exciting. Today's conversation is going to be about raising boys versus girls. And I think you and I have a lot of little conversations about this. Growing up, so I'm 25, she's about to be 55 this year. I think we always kind of butt heads. And then I feel like as I've gotten older, we've kind of come to a baseline. But we have a lot to say. So
I definitely feel like you have a lot to say.
I do have a lot to say.
You say we have little conversations, but I think that you bring it up a lot.
Whoa.
Because you're one girl in a house of two boys. So I think this would be a nice way to
very interesting conversation.
Get your thoughts out.
Okay. Make it feel like I got a vent. Yeah. All right.
Don't be offended.
So I'll let you start then, because something that I do want to start on is that obviously we're both women. She was raised in a household where it was her and then a younger brother. I was raised in a household with two brothers. I was in the middle. So I think there's pros and cons to that, obviously. I also think that generationally it's a little bit different. And so from your point of view, how was it growing up in a house as just a woman, young girl? And we kind of talked about this on the ride up here, interesting enough.
Yeah.
Versus raising then two boys and a girl, and where do you think that there's similarities, differences? Start there.
Well, definitely growing up in my household, I feel like a lot of differences. I feel like subconsciously and consciously, I made an effort to make it very different because generationally, I feel like in my household, there were girl roles and there were boy roles. Mm-hmm. And also because I was the older sister, there were roles for older sister versus younger child. Mm-hmm. So I think I did bring in a lot of what I was taught and what my family believed was the right thing to do, and that's where your conversations would come in and try to question that and bring to light some of those things. Mm-hmm. But I think generally overall, our household is very different than what I grew up in. I grew up in a household where I remember where I had to wash the bathtub for my dad. Yeah. I know. Ew. And that was my responsibility. And I had to, because he was younger, it was my responsibility. I don't know if it was necessarily because I was a girl, but because I was the older sister, I had to heat up something for my sibling, for my brother, or help him, get dressed or something like that. So I don't know if it was necessarily because I was a girl or if it was because I was the older sister, but either way, that was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things were different because I was the girl. My brother had more freedom and less expectations as far as the house was concerned. And he didn't really have any expectations as far as where he was going or needing to let the family know where he was going, where I was.
Had to keep tabs on everything.
Yeah. Had to, who are you going with? Where are you going? Who's going to be there? Mm-hmm. Things like that.
Mm-hmm. When you were a child, were there ever things that happened that you were like, I'm not going to do that when I have children, or I am going to do that when I have children? Was there anything that stuck out to you that your parents did to you that you wanted or did not want to replicate?
One thing, and I don't even know if it has to do with, I don't think I ever questioned what my parents did. I was like that child. Yeah.
Girl,
I wasn't like
everything.
I never questioned. I did kind of just go along with what my parents did. If I felt like it was unfair, that was one thing, but I never voiced it. I never we never had a time in the living room where we're like, okay, Liza, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Yeah. No, none of that. But I always remember that I said I'm going to have more than 2 children.
Okay.
I think that somehow I felt that I was a little lonely being the only girl. and being the oldest. And I just felt like, no, 2 isn't enough.
Oh, at least I had each other.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Girl, it's funny you say these things because I feel like, I mean, obviously I didn't clean up no bathtubs before somebody got in it. That's a lot. I do feel, and I think we've had a conversation when I was younger where I had a lot of household responsibilities.
Yeah.
I think because I had a lot more responsibility though in the house, and I was showing that I can like maintain that I had more outdoor or more freedom outside. So I had the same. I feel like I had the same like, oh, where are you going? How long are you going to be out with? Who you going with? Who's picking you up? Who's dropping you off? But it was more of like if I had all my ducks in a row, then I can go. Versus, I feel like the boys felt like they had to like sneak around a little bit because I know Imani like would sneak out. He's also the older child. I was like the second, so I had a little bit more freedom there. But then I was the older sister for Alan, my younger brother. So I remember we were on a cruise one time, and
yes.
we're 2 years apart. So I think I was 6, Alan was 4, and there was like little kiddie rooms. So the first room was like 3 to 5, and the second room was like 6 to like maybe 12 or something, or like 10. And the big kids room, like the middle room, was so much cooler than the little kid room. So I wanted to go to the big kid room, and my parents were like, nah, you gotta stay with your little brother. So it's like things like that I remember that I'm like, this is unfair. However, like in hindsight, I think I'm okay with like the responsibility. I think as I've grown up, I enjoy having Alan as like a little brother, like a caregiver, and I do think that it teaches some responsibility. I think where it gets lost is that there's not, like when Alan became of age to be able to do things, the, I guess like emphasis on him taking on responsibility like almost fell. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like where I get annoyed is that I feel like, oh, when I was 12, I was like, I had to do all these chores before I can even ask to leave the house. Versus when Alan was 12, it was like B, like just walking out the house, didn't say nothing, yada, yada, yada. That's where I'm like, it don't make no sense.
In all honesty, as a parent raising 2 boys and a girl, whenever you asked to do something, whenever things came up for you, I struggled. I was like, all right, what do I do? Like, do I let her? Don't I let her? Because I remember the whole sleepover thing was a huge issue for me.
But that's something that I got to do that the boys didn't.
You got to do it, but it took such a long time because you were asking for sleepovers like kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we don't do that. No, you sleep in your own home. No, I never did that, so you're never going to do it. Finally, I think like 5th grade, I gave in, and that was like, I struggled with that so much. Whereas I don't think I would have struggled with it as much with the boys. They never asked. The boys never asked to sleepovers, but the boys had sleepovers. And that was, it didn't feel like this earth-shattering thing for me as it was for you.
Like having people over versus me going over?
Yes, for both. Like you having people over, you sleeping over, it was like something that I struggled with. Whereas like with the boys, it was like, how many times did Alan's friends, I would wake up, I didn't even know that they were sleeping over, and I'd find them in the living room, and it wasn't like a big deal. So I think that was my cultural, maybe, upbringing of that differentiation between boys do one thing and girls do another. And I think that was like sticking its head through somehow, somewhere. And then like, just the fact of having, now that you're older, now that, you're having relationships and stuff, and having a boy come to the house or having a boy sleep at the house now that you're an adult, that's like huge for me. That's so huge for me. Whereas again, the boys haven't really asked, but I don't think I feel the same way about it with them. I know, it's not fair. It's not fair. Faces. But just to be honest, like it's just different. It's like a different feeling that I just go through.
It's always like that. I mean, I feel like that's not a huge generational difference anymore either. Like, I feel like even today, girls are, like, handled more with care than boys are, which I think is, I'm not mad at that in the grand scheme of things. Like, I would rather be, like, really cutesy, really demure. Like, I don't want to do all the heavy lifting anyway.
Yeah.
It just, it's a little bit difficult because I think we also had a conversation on the ride up here. It was like a 3-hour drive, so we had like a lot of conversation. And part of the conversation, we mentioned how boys are kind of put on a pedestal and like kind of like once they come out, they're kind of like, okay, like you got to cater to the man, you got to make sure you do everything for the man, especially like in Hispanic culture, where I feel like it gives a little bit. I think in the later years, it almost results in lack of emotional intelligence for men, where they can't function sometimes as adults versus women then are taking care of the house or taking care of the children. They got to handle, and now in society you got to work, you got to take care of the kids, you got to like raise a whole house, you know what I mean, like all these responsibilities on the women that, and it's like you can't fix the whole world, so I'm not like coming at you for this, but I feel like as a whole society it's so hard to be a woman sometimes because there's so many responsibilities that are put on the woman, and it's almost so unforgiving, and it starts like at a young age. I do think generations now are changing that, and I feel like I had this thought a lot. The reason I asked you the question of like, oh, was there ever a time where you like were a kid and you're like, I'm not going to do this? Because when I was a kid I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this when I have kids. Like I remember like it's not the issue of washing the dishes, it's that I have to wash the dishes before I can do anything, and Alan's outside playing with his friends doing God knows what, and he still has like mountains of dishes in the sink, you know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like I made the mental note when I was younger that I was like, okay, well obviously as I've gotten older I know it can't be equal all the time because of age differences and different capabilities, but I want to be very conscious of the responsibilities across all my children. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you know what's funny? What's funny also is that I feel like when I was a child, I think, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but this is how I remember it right now. When I was a child, I almost feel like my responsibilities in the home were more when I was younger. As I got older, that bathtub responsibility was no longer a thing. Because I had cheerleading, I had religious education, I had a little job. Like, so as I became older, I feel like my parents used those chores when we were younger. Yeah. And then as we got older, they diminished, like little by little, they decreased. Yeah. Where I did the opposite. I feel like when you guys were little, like you did nothing. And all of a sudden, because you wanted to go to Jasmine's house, I was like, well, sweep first.
Right. You know like, and all my friends, they would come over and be like, Erica gotta do her chores before we could do anything. Everybody knew that. So they would like come into the house like after school and they would like help me sweep the floors. They'd be like, there's no dust on the floor. I'm like, no, there's dust. She's gonna find it, bro. You gotta sweep it up.
Who knows? Maybe I was just doing that to keep you in the house a little longer, to stall like, with my struggle. You want to see me
when I come home. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on my behalf, like I was a single mom at that point, so I had a lot of pressure. Like if anything happened, God forbid, like it was going to be all on me, and your dad was going to let me know that. So that was a little bit of pressure too. And
that is a huge difference, I think. I think my mom was born in a 2-parent household. I wasn't. I was born in a single household for most of my life. So I do think that there's also a lot of pressure, especially if we're going back to like typically men are viewed that they can handle themselves a little bit in more situations than women when it comes to like society.
Right.
And so I feel like being a woman, having to raise 3 children on your own, there's always that pressure of like, oh, if something happens, like I'm the only person that has responsibility kind of over obviously like we have 2 parents, but it's like in that environment it was very singled.
Yes.
So I get that, and I do have to give some grace in that aspect. I think as an adult I have to like be able to take a step back and be like, well, I know it's a little bit different. Transitioning a little bit, how was it being the only girl in a positive way? Because I also have some like really fun moments, I feel like, being the only girl in like most, what's that word? Predominantly male household for some of my life. There were some fun parts. Was there for you moments where you're like, I enjoy this, or like in reflection you enjoyed being the only girl? Do you feel like it was always like a responsibility?
It wasn't always a responsibility. And, like, I'm going to say this with, like, a lot of respect and a lot of care because my parents did their best.
Yeah.
But I do feel, my perspective, maybe this is not what their intention was at all, but I do feel that it was either we glorified my brother or everything needs to be equal. So it never was my time to shine. You know what I mean? It was either like everything's equal, you guys do everything equal, or, you know, he did like wonderful like, you know, he got to do like,
Sheesh.
yeah, special
Yeah.
things. And the reason why I say that is because my family believe in bedtimes, right?
Okay.
So we had bedtimes. I don't know. I'm going to say 9 o'clock. My bedtime was 9 o'clock. His bedtime was 9 o'clock, although we were 4 years apart, which was fine. I never complained about it. We both went to bed at the same time. Da 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 da. All of a sudden, I'm 8th grade. Oh, so you don't need a bedtime anymore. We're going to let you decide when you want to go to bed. And my brother got the same privilege at the same time. So yes, it happened when it was appropriate for me, because now I'm in 8th grade, I can decide, but he's 4 years younger and he got to experience that younger. And also my parents did a thing where it wasn't what is that when you get money for doing allowance? We didn't do allowances, but my parents were really good about showing us how to budget money. So they were like, okay, you got $25 for 2 weeks, and that's all you get. So if you want to spend it all in one day, you know, or if you want to drag it out, but that's all you're going to get for those 2 weeks. And I thought that was really good because that showed us how to budget money and how to manage our money, whatever. And he always got the same amount that I did. And I was, and I think about that now. So it was either we were both equal, or he would get these extra privileges. He would get extra privileges.
Interesting.
But I never knew any different. So I never felt like this is unfair. Like this is me now speaking about it. But I don't think I ever got to be like the girl.
Like the
you know what I mean?
spotlight?
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay. Because I do think that we're different in that sense. Because although I complain about certain things, I have to say that being the only girl and the middle child, like I was so like princess.
Yes.
By like our family and like people outside of our family, like family, friends.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing, because always like that, what's that word? Like the narrative around middle children, and it's like they're always like on one end of the spectrum where they're either like so attention seeking or they're like super quiet. And I feel like I can resonate with that to a certain extent. But where I excelled and where I put all my effort in was like in school, because I needed something to like hold me out, even though I was the only girl. I don't know why I felt like I needed to like achieve at that. But because I was always like doing really well at school, I was always like doing some type of extracurricular activity, and I always applied myself on top of only being the only girl. I felt like, okay, yeah, I'm annoyed that the boys get like sometimes special treatment in the house, but I felt seen in the house. You know what I mean? And I feel like that carried out throughout most of my life. Like, there's like different things that you have that you focus on or that you go through as you like grow up, and we talk about it and we have those conversations. But overall, I don't have that experience of like there was never my time to shine. Like I feel like if I had a play, if I had a concert, if I got like an A in a class, like we were celebrating, and everybody was like that. You know what I mean? Alan and Imani, which I think was actually a very beneficial thing. Like everybody was seen. It never felt in that case. Yeah. Like I felt like it was such a pro at some things to be the only girl.
Yeah.
Love that.
No, a lot of our things were equal. Although, you know, as I got older, then I was the first one to go to college. I think that was a celebration.
Yeah.
Like more about my accomplishments.
Yeah.
But not as like a young child. I don't remember anything like, you know, being the girl, being the spotlight for that moment. I don't really remember stuff like that. They really, really made it equal. A lot of equal.
You prefer the equal over the spotlight?
No, because I didn't do that with you guys.
Yeah.
I remember Imani specifically saying, well, you wanted a princess.
Yeah.
Whenever you would like have your moments, and the boys would look at me like, there's Erica being Erica.
Yeah.
And
it's the best.
so you definitely were given the, you know, your little crown and
Thank you.
referred to as the princess.
I do appreciate that.
I did do that purposefully.
I love that. I had the princess room. It was the best.
Yes, we gave you always had your own room. You always had. Yeah.
So I'm curious if you have similar experiences. Leave a comment down below, like where you are in your sibling track. If you're like the oldest girl, youngest girl, only child, and how that looked like for you. Super curious. Leave a comment for us. Share your knowledge and wisdom and perspective. This episode, we're gonna end with our favorite season. you can go because it seems like you already know it.
So the reason why I said let's do favorite season is because I'm noticing that forever I'm like summer. Summer is my favorite season.
Are you going to switch up?
I am. Summer has always been my favorite season. It's like that's when I feel the most awake, the brightest, the happiest. But I'm really starting to enjoy, and I'm looking forward to the fall.
I knew she was going to say that.
Yes, I'm so excited about the fall. And this is the first time ever because initially I was the type of person that would feel like, oh, fall, it's the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Oh no, like I am not feeling that way anymore.
Oh,
yeah, I'm really looking forward
I love that for you.
to the fall. My birthday's in the fall, so I'm getting excited about that. So yeah, I've changed. I'm coming over.
And you know what? It's funny that you say I've changed because fall is a season of transition. Fall and spring, obviously. Love fall. The reason that I was about to be like, yo, what the hell? Because I love fall.
Yes.
I love fall. I love spring and I love fall. I love the transitional seasons. I love spring because obviously it's like winter coming into like the warmer months. So it's like everybody's kind of like coming outside. The grass is coming in. The flowers come in. It's beautiful in the spring. It's a great time to like hike. And I love fall for the exact same reasons, but it's on like the tail end. So I think we're very similar in that sense. Yeah. But yeah, y'all, if you stayed this long, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Core Focus Studios for having us in their space.
Thank you. In this beautiful
awesome
space.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Come check it out. And we'll see y'all next time on the next episode.
Bye.